Welcome, viewers, to a journey through time. We'll explore one of the most intriguing chapters in Earth's history, the Younger Dryas event. Today, we're not just recounting history, we're diving into a mystery that might have shaped human civilization as we know it. Imagine Earth roughly 12,900 years ago, just starting to bloom from the grip of the last ice age. Then, abruptly, plunges back into cold. This sudden shift, known as the Younger Dryas, lasted about 1,200 years and has puzzled scientists for decades. What could cause such a rapid change? From ice cores in Greenland to sediment layers around the globe, evidence suggests dramatic environmental upheaval. Some theories point to a massive cosmic impact, others to a flood of fresh water diluting the North Atlantic, disrupting the ocean currents and thus the global climate. Consider this. Cosmic impact or sudden release of glacial meltwater, akin to all the Great Lakes combined pouring into the ocean. Either scenario would have been catastrophic not just for the climate, but for life itself, potentially contributing to megafaunal extinctions and reshaping human societies. And here's where it gets fascinating. Could this event or events be the kernel of truth behind myths and legends found in cultures worldwide? From the Epic of Gilgamesh to Native American stories, flood myths are ubiquitous. Could these be echoes of the Younger Dryas, a collective memory passed down through millennia? As we explore further, we'll delve into these myths, examine archaeological and geological evidence, and consider the physiological and anthropological implications of such a profound environmental change on human culture. Stay with us as we peel back the layers of time, exploring the Younger Dryas not just as a geological anomaly, but as a pivotal moment in human history, possibly the catalyst for our myths, our fears, and our very civilization. Now, let's dive into one of the most dramatic chapters of the Younger Dryas, the massive meltwater pulse. Imagine, if you will, the scale of ice sheets covering much of North America and Europe, each the size of modern-day continents. As these glaciers began to melt, they didn't just slowly recede. At the end of the Younger Dryas, there was a cataclysmic event. Picture a torrent of meltwater, the equivalent of all the Great Lakes, rushing into the North Atlantic. It wasn't just water, it was like 1 billion fire hoses pointed at the ocean for centuries. This flood would have been unlike anything seen in human history. There would have been tsunamis 100 foot high moving at the speed of sound. This is devastating. The sheer volume and speed of this water could have reshaped coastlines, altered ocean currents, plunged the world into a brief, intense cold snap. Imagine living through that. The ground beneath your feet turning into a river, your home submerged, the climate you knew transforming literally overnight. For those witnessing this, it must have seemed like the end of the world. Flood myths across cultures might carry echoes of this terror. Waters rising, sweeping away everything, leaving only the highest grounds habitable. This isn't just a tale, it's a potential memory of one of the Earth's most profound environmental shifts. And here's where it gets fascinating. Could this massive meltwater pulse be evidence of truth behind the flood myths we find worldwide? These stories might not just be moral tales or creation myths, but actual memories of a cataclysmic event, encoded into the very fabric of human culture. As we move forward, we'll explore how these myths might connect to the Younger Dryas, what archaeological and geological evidence supports these theories, how such an event could shape human civilization at its very dawn. Stay with us as we try to piece together this puzzle of our planet's past. Now, let's weave together the threads of flood myths from across the globe. These aren't just isolated stories, they form a tapestry of human experience potentially linked to the dramatic events at the end of the Younger Dryas. From the Epic of Gilgamesh in ancient Mesopotamia, where Utnapishtim's Ark rides out a divine deluge, to Noah's Ark, a Judeo-Christian text, where survival hinges on faith, those narratives share common themes. A great flood, human survival through divine or exceptional means, and a new beginning. In Hindu mythology, we have Manu, the first man, saved by a fish, an avatar of Vishnu guiding him to safety. Native American tribes tell of great floods too, with survival often tied to animal helpers or climbing to higher ground. Each story, unique in detail, yet collectively, they paint a picture of a global flood narrative. Could these myths be humanity's way of remembering and processing a catastrophic event like the massive meltwater pulse we discussed? Or are they allegories for other kinds of upheaval, be it moral, societal, or environmental? Some argue these stories are too widespread, too detailed to be mere coincidence or fiction. They suggest a shared human experience, possibly linked to the geological and climatic shifts at the end of the Younger Dryas. But not everyone agrees. Skeptics point out the lack of uniform geological evidence for a global flood, suggesting these myths might reflect local or regional events exaggerated over time. Yet the idea of these myths as echoes of a real shared trauma, whether from the Younger Dryas or other significant climate disruptions, opens up a fascinating avenue. It suggests our ancestors were not just storytellers, but also keepers of a collective memory, using myth to cope with and explain the unexplainable. As we continue, we'll delve into these myths one by one, exploring what truths they might hold and how they might connect not just to ancient events, but to understanding history, geology, and the human psyche. Let's journey back to one of the oldest stories ever written, the Epic of Gilgamesh. This isn't just a tale, it's a window into ancient Mesopotamia's understanding of life, death, and perhaps a great flood. Gilgamesh, a legendary king, seeks immortality and learns of Adaptation, a man who survived a divine deluge. This flood story within the epic parallels many global flood myths, but it's the detail and antiquity that set it apart. Adaptation, warned by the god Ea, builds a massive boat to save his family and the seed of all creatures. This narrative, predating the Bible by millennia, raises questions. Is this an actual memory of a catastrophic event? Could it reflect localized flooding known to ancient Sumerians, or hint at something more widespread? Scholars debate whether this flood in Gilgamesh might connect to real historical or climatic events. The epic's detailed account, including the ark's construction and the flood's aftermath, suggests a deep cultural impact. Could stories like these be humanity's attempt to process and remember dramatic environmental changes, potentially linked to the Younger Dryas? Moreover, Gilgamesh's story isn't just about survival, it's about seeking meaning in life and facing mortality. This narrative, weaving in themes of divine intervention and human resilience, mirrors the psychological depth we find in many flood myths. It's not just about water, it's about rebirth and renewal and the search for understanding in a chaotic world. As we peel back the layers of this epic, we're not just reading a story, we're looking into the soul of a civilization, possibly shaped by real, cataclysmic events. The Epic of Gilgamesh, like the flood it describes, might be a bridge connecting myth with history, offering clues to our ancestors' lives and the natural world they inhabited. Stay with us as we explore further, not just the tale of Gilgamesh, but how these ancient stories might reflect our shared human experience of awe, terror, and resilience in the face of nature's might. Now, sail into the heart of one of the most iconic flood myths, Noah's Ark. This story, central to Judeo-Christian traditions, tells of Noah, a righteous man chosen by God to build an ark and save life from a deluge meant to cleanse the world of corruption. This narrative is rich with symbolism, God's warning, the construction of the ark, the gathering of animals, and the flood itself. But beyond its religious significance, let's consider the story in the context of our exploration into ancient floods and climatic upheavals. Could the story of Noah, like those before it, echo a collective memory of a real flood event, perhaps linked to the Younger Dryas or other regional catastrophes? The detail of the ark, its exact dimensions, precise timing of the flood, suggest it's more than just a moral tale. From a speculative viewpoint, Noah's Ark might represent humanity's way of coping with the inexplicable, fast floods, sudden climatic shifts. The ark becomes a symbol not only of salvation, but of human ingenuity and resilience against nature's fury. Moreover, this story teaches us about human nature, our fear of divine wrath, our hope for redemption, and our capacity to survive against the odds. It's a narrative that, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, might not just be about a literal flood, but about our perpetual struggle with mortality, morality, and the natural world. As we continue, we'll explore how these myths might not only reflect historical or climatic events, but also shape our understanding of ourselves. The story of Noah, like the waters that rose in his time, carries with it lessons, warnings, and perhaps even a blueprint for survival. Now let's set sail across the waters of time to the shores of ancient India, where we encounter the story of Manu, a narrative deeply woven into the fabric of Hindu mythology. Manu, often considered the progenitor of humanity in Hindu texts, finds a small fish in his hands during a ritual wash. This fish over time grows larger, revealing itself as Matsya, an avatar of the god Vishnu. Vishnu in this form warns Manu of an impending deluge that would cleanse the earth. Like the tales of Gilgamesh and Noah, Manu is instructed to build a boat, gather all forms of life, and survive the flood. But what sets Manu's story apart is its integration into the cyclical nature of creation and destruction in Hindu cosmology. Here, the flood isn't just a one-off catastrophe, it's part of a larger cosmic cycle. The Indian subcontinent indeed has a rich history of floods shaped by its unique geography. Could the story of Manu then be more than a myth? Could it be a cultural memory of real catastrophic floods that shaped ancient Indian civilization? Consider this. The Indus River and its tributaries, which nurtured the Indus Valley civilization, have historically undergone significant changes. These shifts could have caused catastrophic floods, potentially remembered and mythologized through stories like Manu's. Archaeological evidence suggests that the Indus Valley civilization experienced environmental challenges including floods. While not as catastrophic as the global deluge in Manu's tale, these events might have been monumental enough to become part of the cultural memory woven into stories of survival and renewal. Even today, India faces severe flooding. Could these modern events be echoes of the ancient past, keeping the memory of such myths alive? The recurring nature of floods in this region might not only validate these myths, but also underscore the resilience of human societies against nature's might. As we delve deeper into the story of Manu, we're not just exploring an ancient myth, but understanding how environmental challenges might have shaped human civilizations, their stories, and their survival strategies. As we consider the story of Manu in light of environmental challenges, let's explore how ancient Indian civilizations might have adapted to these challenges. The Indus Valley civilization, with its advanced urban planning, showcases an early example of human adaptation to environmental pressures. Evidence from sites like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa suggests sophisticated urban planning, including extensive water management systems. These cities had advanced drainage systems, wells, and possibly even flood barriers, indicating a society well versed in dealing with water, whether too much or too little. Could these be practical responses to the kinds of floods Manu's story describes? Moreover, ancient Indian texts and archaeological findings highlight the importance of water conservation. The construction of step wells, tanks, and canals across the subcontinent wasn't just for daily needs, but could also serve as flood control measures. These systems reflect a deep understanding of their environment, possibly developed over centuries, if not millennia. Culturally, this adaptation is also seen in myths, rituals, and festivals centered around water. The prevalence of water deities in Hindu mythology, like Varuna and the river goddesses, might not just be spiritual, but also a reflection of the critical role water played in the ancient survival strategies. Texts like the Arthashastra, an ancient Indian treatise on statecraft, economy, military strategy, discuss water management, agriculture, and disaster response, suggesting that these societies had developed complex strategies for environmental survival long before these stories were written down. The story of Manu, then, could be more than a myth. It might be a cultural memory of these adaptations. A narrative that served to teach future generations about the importance of environmental stewardship and resilience. As we continue, we'll explore how these ancient insights could inform our modern understanding of environmental sustainability. Now let's cross the vast oceans to the Americas, where we find Native American flood myths. Tales that span from the Arctic to the tip of South America, each rich with unique details yet echoing a common theme of survival through great floods. Among the Lakota, there's a story of a great flood caused by the battles of the Thunderbird and Unkigila, I don't know how to pronounce that, great underwater serpent. In the Hopi tradition, we have the story of emergence, where people move through different worlds, each ending in destruction, often by water. These myths, like those from other cultures, might be reflections of real environmental changes. The Americas, before European contact, saw significant climatic shifts, including the ending of the Younger Dryas, which could have influenced both these stories. But what makes these narratives particularly fascinating is their diversity and the variety of survival strategies depicted. From the Zuni myth, where survivors climb a mountain to avoid the rising waters, to the Cherokee story, where the creator warns of a flood. These tales often highlight human ingenuity and divine intervention. They showcase not just the fear of environmental catastrophe, but also the hope and resilience inherent in human nature. Each of these myths could be a window into how ancient Native American societies understood and coped with natural disasters. For instance, the idea of climbing to safety or receiving divine warnings might reflect real strategies used during times of flooding or other natural upheavals. Archaeologically, we find evidence that might support these myths. Sites like Cahokia, one of the largest pre-Columbian settlements north of Mexico, show signs of significant flooding events. Interestingly, many of these survival strategies are still relevant today. Indigenous knowledge often includes sophisticated methods of flood management and ecological stewardship, which could be linked back to these ancient stories. The continuity suggests a deep practical wisdom embedded within these myths. As we move forward, we'll explore how these myths, along with those from other cultures, might not only tell us about past events, but also guide us in understanding the resilience of human societies in the face of environmental challenges. Now we turn our lens towards cultural memory, a concept that bridges the gap between myth and history. It's about how societies remember, reshape, and pass on their experiences through generations. Cultural memory isn't just about what's written down, it's in our stories, our rituals, and even the landscapes we live in. Flood myths from across the world, like those we've discussed, could be a form of this memory, encoding environmental knowledge and survival strategies into narratives that persist over millennia. Consider how these stories might have functioned. In a world without written history, myths served as oral archives. They taught survival skills, moral codes, environmental awareness. The story of a great flood, for instance, could be a warning about the power of water, urging caution and respect for nature. But it's not just about the past. The relevance of these myths today lies in how they reflect our ongoing relationship with the environment. As we face climate change and rising sea levels, these ancient stories of floods remind us of human vulnerability to natural forces. Moreover, cultural memory helps us understand how societies cope with trauma and change. These flood myths shared across different cultures might not only be about literal floods, but metaphorically about any overwhelming crisis, whether it's environmental, social, or existential. Now let's explore how these ancient memories influence our modern approaches to science, archaeology, and psychology. How do we use these myths today, not just to understand the past, but to navigate our future? As we dive deeper into cultural memory, we begin to see its profound implications not just for how we understand our past, but how we shape our future. Cultural memory, as we've discussed, isn't just about remembering, it's about how those memories influence our actions, our values, and our societal structures. Firstly, cultural memory acts as a mechanism for social cohesion. It binds communities together through shared narratives, which can either unite or divide. For instance, the remembrance of historical injustices or victories can foster solidarity or fuel ongoing conflicts. This dual role is crucial in understanding both unity and strife in societies. Secondly, it serves as a tool for education and transmission of values. Through stories, rituals, and monuments, each generation is taught what's revered or reviled in their culture. This transmission isn't just about passing facts, but about embedding emotional and moral lessons into the cultural fabric. Cultural memory also shapes identity. For marginalized groups, remembering past traumas or celebrating resistance can be an act of empowerment, preserving a narrative against erasure or assimilation. This leads us to political implications of cultural memory. Governments and institutions often control or reinterpret these memories to legitimize their rule or to unify national identities. However, this can also lead to the suppression of memories that might challenge those in power. There's a darker side too. Memory as power, the ability to shape what is remembered or forgotten, can be a form of control. This manipulation can lead to historical revisionism we see today happening all the time, where certain memories are emphasized over others, altering collective identity. In today's digital age, how we remember is changing. Technology, cultural memory with digital archives, social media, and AI, we're creating new forms of collective memory that are more immediate, more accessible, but also more mutable. This raises questions about authenticity, permanence, and the democratization of memory. From a psychological perspective, cultural memory affects mental health. How societies remember and commemorate their past can deeply influence individual and collective mental well-being. Cultural memory shapes our identity and how we perceive ourselves in relation to society. Memories are of trauma or marginalization can lead to persistent stress or trauma responses, influencing mental health outcomes. For example, communities that have experienced historical or ongoing oppression often suffer from higher rates of mental health issues due to the internalization of these negative experiences. This brings us to the concept of intergenerational trauma, where the effects of historical injustices or traumas are passed down through generations, not just genetically, but through shared cultural memory. Think of instances like the Holocaust. This can manifest as increased vulnerability to mental health disorders, like PTSD or depression, even among descendants who didn't directly experience the original events. However, cultural memory isn't just about trauma. It also includes resilience and healing. Many cultures have rituals, stories, or practices that serve as mechanisms for healing and resilience. These can be seen in commemorative events where communities come together to remember, but also to heal and strengthen their bonds. The implications here are profound. Cultural memory influences how we approach mental health care. It's not just about providing therapy, it's about understanding the cultural context in which individuals live. This understanding can lead to more effective, culturally sensitive treatments that acknowledge and integrate these memories into healing processes. As we continue, we'll explore how these cultural memories might not just be stories, but could reflect real, verifiable events through the lens of archaeological and geological evidence. Here we move from the realm of memory into the tangible world of science, where we seek evidence that might connect these stories to real historical events. Archaeology offers us physical clues. Excavations around the world reveal layers of silt flood deposits that could correspond to stories of great floods. For instance, in Mesopotamia, layers of sediment have been found that could potentially be linked to the flood described in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Techniques like radiocarbon dating, sediment analysis, pollen sampling allow us to pinpoint when these floods might have occurred. This isn't just about finding evidence of water, it's about understanding the environmental context of these civilizations, which could have shaped their myths. Geologically, we look for signatures of past floods. It includes finding evidence of rapid water deposition, changes in river courses, or markers of sea level rise. Such events could not only have impacted ancient civilizations, but left a mark in the Earth's record that we can interpret today. The end of the Younger Dryas period, for example, saw massive glacial lake outbursts. These mega floods could have been catastrophic, reshaping landscapes and potentially giving rise to the flood myths we know today. Geological evidence for these events includes large-scale sediment deposits, altered river systems, and even changes in oceanic circulation. Archaeologically, we find cities like Ur in Mesopotamia, Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley, where signs of flooding are evident. These sites don't just tell us of floods, but also of human adaptation, evidence of flood defenses, elevated structures, or shifts in settlement patterns. While these findings suggest a connection between myth and geology, they also prompt us to consider the skepticism surrounding these interpretations. Not all scholars agree that these myths directly correlate to specific global-scale events like the Younger Dryas flood. Flood myths are widespread, but linking them to a single catastrophic event like the Younger Dryas might be an oversimplification. Localized floods, tsunamis, or even routine river inundations could have been mythologized differently across cultures. The universality of these stories might reflect human psychology more than a singular historical event. This skepticism invites us to consider alternative views. Perhaps these myths are not about literal floods, but metaphorical ones, overwhelming changes, be they climatic, social, or political. Or maybe they're about collective human anxieties in the quest for survival and renewal. Yet the dialogue between myth and science isn't one-sided. Mythology can inspire scientific inquiry, leading to discoveries that might not have been pursued otherwise. Conversely, scientific discoveries can reframe our understanding of myths, providing a richer, more nuanced picture of human history. This collaboration between mythologists, geologists, and archaeologists underscores a critical point. Our understanding of the past is not static. It evolves with new evidence, technologies, and interpretations, enriching our cultural heritage. As we move forward, we're going to explore criticism and alternative views, examining how these different perspectives challenge and enhance our understanding of ancient narratives and events. So now we approach a realm where science meets skepticism, where myths are not just stories, but subjects of intense debate. In this segment, we'll examine the critiques that question the direct correlation between flood myths and historical or geological events. What if these myths are more about human psychology, societal transition, or even metaphors for other overwhelming changes? Consider the skeptics who argue that while floods are a universal phenomenon, the myths might not be about literal water, but about cultural or existential floods, times of chaos, change, or divine intervention. This view suggests myths could reflect broader human experiences rather than specific historical events. Myths often serve multiple purposes. They explain natural phenomena, but also encode social values, teach survival strategies, or comment on the human condition. Reducing them to mere records of historical floods might miss the deeper cultural and psychological insights they offer. Moreover, cultural relativism plays a role. What one culture might interpret as a literal flood, another might see as a spiritual or moral cleansing. This diversity in interpretation enriches our understanding but also challenges any singular universal explanation for these myths. From a psychological perspective, these myths might not be about historical accuracy, but about processing fear, understanding mortality, or coping with change. They provide a framework for societies to discuss and deal with existential threats, not just physical floods. The beauty of these myths lies in their elasticity. They stretch across time, morphing to fit new contexts, whether it's scientific inquiry, literature, popular culture. This ability to adapt and inspire new interpretations keeps these stories alive, relevant, and continually evolving. Let's enter the psychological and anthropological angle. We'll explore how these ancient myths not only mirror the fears, hopes, and existential questions of our ancestors, but also continue to shape our contemporary psyche and societal structures. From a psychological standpoint, myths like those of the Great Floods can be seen as narratives that help societies process trauma, understand natural disasters, or cope with the unpredictability of life. They serve as a collective dream where societies explore their deepest anxieties and desires. Anthropologically, these myths provide insights into how early human societies made sense of their world. They're not just stories, but tools for survival, teaching about nature, community, morality, and the human condition. They reinforce social cohesion, offering explanations for the unexplainable. Myths are foundational. They shape our rituals, laws, and social norms. The flood narratives, for instance, often include themes of survival, renewal, and divine judgment, which reflect societal values about justice, survival skills, and the human relationship with the divine or natural world. Today, these myths still resonate. They inspire films, literature, even policy decisions about environmental crisis. They remind us of our own vulnerability to nature, but also our capacity for resilience and innovation. The story of Noah, for example, isn't just about a flood, it's about rebuilding after disaster, a theme very relevant in our age of climate change. On a personal level, these myths help us understand our place in the world. They offer a narrative through which individuals can explore their fears of annihilation, their hopes for rebirth, and their connection to something larger than themselves. In conclusion, the journey through these myths isn't just a walk through ancient history, it's a dialogue with our present and future. They teach us about the resilience of humanity, the power of story, and the continuous search for meaning in a world full of wonders and threats. As we step away from this exploration, reminded that these myths, from Gilgamesh to Native American legends, weren't just relics, but living stories, breathing with each retelling, adaptation with each new generation. They challenge us to understand not just the past, but how it informs our present and shapes our future. These myths continue to inspire, to provoke thought, and to unite us across time and culture. They remind us of our shared human experience, of our capacity to imagine, to survive, and to create meaning in a chaotic world. In a world increasingly fragmented by differences, perhaps these ancient stories can serve as bridges, reminding us of our common origins, our universal fears, and our collective dreams. They encourage us to look beyond the literal and find deeper truths about ourselves and our place in the cosmos. Thank you for joining us on this journey through flood myths and their meanings. As we part ways, remember, every story ever told is a testament to our enduring nature, persistent hope, and our boundless curiosity. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep the stories alive. As we conclude today's exploration of the depths of human history, we stand on the brink of an extraordinary journey. Our next episode will venture into the heart of southeastern Turkey, where the land whispers secrets of our earliest civilizations. begin our in-depth examination of Göbekli Tepe, a site that challenges everything we thought we knew about the dawn of human society. Surrounding this enigmatic site, we'll uncover more ancient wonders like Karahan Tepe, each with its own story, each adding layers to our understanding of how our ancestors lived, worshipped, and perhaps how they began to form the societies we are a part of today. Join us as we delve into these archaeological marvels, seeking to understand not just the how, but the why behind these monumental creations. What drove our ancestors to build such structures? What were they trying to communicate across the millennia to us? Tune in next time for an adventure through time, where every stone uncovered reveals not just the past, but a piece of our shared human heritage. If you enjoyed this video, then please remember to like and subscribe for more. Till next time, we continue to explore the whole ass thing, everything.